2010 Forum Series. Colonel Tom Vail, the Deputy Director of the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness, will moderate the discussion of instilling resiliency in the all-volunteer force. Resiliency used to be suck it up, and that is not it anymore. That doesn't work. You know, Vietnam was individual rotations, initial or a unit rotation, and thereafter individual rotations. And so what you carried with you after each rotation was something that you had nobody to share it with. Today, I mean, I was a battalion commander in Vietnam. I had 2 tours over there up in Central Highlands, high, tough, NBA, no VC and black jammers running around, anything like that. And I'm in Vietnam every day. And I know every soldier who's been in combat is back in the war zone every day. And sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's difficult. But suck it up is not in vogue in 2010. So with that, Colonel, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, sir.
Ask questions.
Thank you, sir, and you're an inspiration to all of us, sir. It's good to see you again. Well, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to the 2010 Association of the United States Army Convention Panel, Resilience in the All-Volunteer Force. On behalf of General Casey and General Rhonda Cornum, my boss, she's the Director of Comprehensive Soldier Fitness and started it back in July of 2008. Been with the program ever since General Casey gave his initial guidance and intent back in July of 2008, and programs definitely got traction and moving out smartly, as you'll see today from leaders and their testimonials and their initiatives and programs at the grassroots down to ground level. I've been the deputy director now for about 3 months, so still learning some of this. I went to the Master Resilience course about 3 months ago, and so now I'm able to preach the gospel and make sure that the program actually gets traction down to the lowest level, that the implementation occurs. That's really my job, so I'm on the road most of the time. Before I go too far into opening comments, I just wanted to go down the line and have each of our distinguished leaders introduce themselves, and then we'll start back again and I'll do some opening comments. General Hertling.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. I'm the Deputy Commanding General for Initial Military Training at Fort Monroe, Virginia, soon to be Fort Eustis, Virginia. And we run the, as part of our initial military training for basic training, AIT, Warrant Officer Basic, and Lieutenant Basic courses, which we push through about 160,000 soldiers a year. It's the first place where most of those individuals get some type of resiliency training, and I'll talk a little bit about that.
And Major General Vince Brooks is coming in from Iraq. He'll be next.
Just say hello, Major General Vincent Brooks from the Grade 1 Duty First here in Basra, Iraq, and with my wingman here, Command Sergeant Major Jim Champagne. Thanks for the opportunity to participate. Look forward to chatting with you.
Thank you, sir. General Tucker.
My name is Mike Tucker, commanding the 2nd Infantry Division in Korea, and we're unique in the Army in that we're not part of R4Gen. We are the only forward deployed committed division in the Army. Think of us kind of like the 11th ACR in the Fulda Gap back in the Cold War. So we're kind of unique in that regard, and I think we have a unique perspective on the resiliency, and we've got some successes that I'm looking forward to sharing with you today.
And I'm Colonel Frank Zacher, commander of 172nd Infantry Brigade. It's a separate infantry brigade located in Bavaria. It's split between Schweinfurt and Grafenwehr, and our headquarters is in Grafenwehr. The unit returned from Iraq last winter, and it's destined to head out again here sometime next year. And we've been designated by AUSA to be the pilot brigade for resilience training. And we've got some heavy rocks in our rucksack, and I'll lay those out for you here in this meeting. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Sergeant Major Stanley Johnson, out of Headquarters TRADOC, Fort Monroe, Virginia. Attached down to Victory University, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where we stood up a resiliency school down there. I've been with the program for over a year and a half, and I will talk about some of the accomplishments and what I bring to the table later on.
Thanks, Sergeant Major.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's our panel, and I want to go ahead and give you some background, a little bit of a progress update on comprehensive soldier fitness. It's a holistic program. It's a long-term strategy designed to give all members of the Army community the knowledge, skills, and the behaviors that optimize their ability and likelihood to thrive. It's not built just for those who are having significant issues, maybe PTSD. We're concerned about that, of course, but this is a training program built for everyone in the Army to take all those experiences and all that great intuition they have now and be able to hook those into some skills and to be able to take an assessment like the global assessment tool and then look at the modules and be able to just become better leaders, better soldiers, civilians, and family members. We want to make sure that they have the ability to successfully cope with life's challenges and adversities, and so the program does so by training specific skills. And those skills are on 5 domains: physical, social, emotional, spiritual, and family. So integrating CSF results in greater resilience overall, which is basically the sum of an individual's assets and resources within these 5 dimensions. Additionally, we use a strengths-based approach. Here, the program recognizes 2 important factors. First, that the best outcomes are realized if existing personnel strengths are leveraged. And secondly, that it's not one-size-fits-all training. We think that's inefficient and inappropriate. We need to adjust and modify and tailor to each of our individuals and to each unit and how those individuals want to train for their particular command or whatever their location might be, or their civilians or family members on a particular post camp or station. Some people are more resilient than others, and so when we first introduced the program, the education and training should be tailored. And this increases interest at all levels, and it's sort of like ability group training in our physical training. We operate on 4 pillars. So we have the global assessment tool, which is an online, 105 questions, takes you about 15 minutes, and it gives you an individual assessment. Anonymity built in, private, no one knows who's taking the test, and Social Security numbers aren't given out, so that they are telling the truth and putting it on the line and basically getting a good chance to see how they score, how well they do in terms of their personal stress. And that allows them to look at modules on those 5 domains and use those modules to understand better, whether it's social or family or spiritual, where that stress is and how to get out of that, rumination or that downward spiraling or whatever that stress point is that they're losing perspective on. And then we have our Master Resilience Trainers, and that course occurs at University of Pennsylvania. It's built on Dr. Karen Rivich's book, The Resilience Factor. 10-day course, University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League, PhD psychologists from the Institute of Positive Psychology, and so a very professional course aimed at senior NCOs. We have captains there, we've got lieutenants, sometimes guys like me go to it because we're going to be program directors, but the course I gave day 1 introduction the other day to a course, and out of 150, where there are about 130 were Sergeant First Class, Master Sergeant. And that's where General Casey's vision kicks in. That's where he wanted to make sure we leverage our training at that level, especially in the beginning where we're training the trainer. We don't have enough to get all the trainers out and to go back and just train their little piece of the pie, their platoon, their section. So it's more about going back and advising the commander on a program and setting up the program at their particular location. So that's our Master Resiliency Trainer. 8 Romeo is the identifier. So when you receive your certificate, you become an 8 Romeo, and that's so we know and we can track our Master Resilience Trainers. We have about 2,200 right now, and we're hoping to have about 5,000 by the end of FY11. We're surging. We're going to have extra courses at University of Pennsylvania, at Victory University, at Fort Jackson, and then also we have a mobile training team. We just left Grafenwehr. Colonel Zacher was our host out there, and we supported General Ham, General Bob Brown, and all of the folks at Grafenwehr by conducting a mobile training team. Next one up is Korea, starting 1 November, supporting 8th Army, 2nd Infantry Division. General Tucker just spoke about the resilience trainers that he needs over there, and so we'll be able to do a directed telescope on training straight to Korea in November, and then about every other month we'll conduct a mobile training team. A few other comments. The modules that we have about 21 modules right now, and we develop them every week. And we're getting a lot of feedback right now from all of our leaders that we need more on relationships, more on family, and more on physical. So, we're asking General Hertling to help us on the physical side of it, along with the enhanced performance folks out at West Point and other locations. But that's the kind of direction we have right now with the modules. They're video casts, they're like podcasts, and the soldiers love it. We already had 620,000 view modules, and we tell them, hey, you ought to view this module, subject to your GAT score, and they'll go in there and watch them all. I mean, it's a YouTube generation. They like the short, concise video modules, so that's working real well. We gain ground and we're rapidly becoming part of Army's culture and lexicon. So the terms that we're using in the course are starting to be terms that you'll hear in the field. So there's a complete lexicon that's starting to occur. And yeah, I'd say last year, I wasn't in the program last year, but there was a lot of effort to get this out, to get the word out and awareness. And now that commanders have it and they realize what the focus is and General Casey's intent, they're moving out. So now it's just a demand-based program, and so it's down in our institution as our fourth pillar. So basic non-commissioned officer course, advanced, Sergeant Major's Academy, War College, all of our institutional schools are taking this program, inculcating it into their program of instruction. And General Hertling was instrumental on 12 hours in BOLIC B, or the old infantry officer basic course, or for whichever branch. I happen to be infantry. So that basic course has 12 hours, and we're teaching the skills. It's not just an intro. So I think that's how you can take a look at this and say, well, it's long-term, it's holistic, and it's across the board, because I'm working with our civilians right now to put together their civilian education program and how this nests into their training of DA civilians. Now I'll go into each of our panel members. We'll discuss these various initiatives, and if you could just hold all the questions till the end. We'll start off with General Hertling, go to General Brooks overseas on our Skype system, and then we'll move out with General Tucker and Colonel Zacher and Sergeant Major Stanley Johnson, the backbone of the Army. Sergeant Major, thanks for being here. Okay, sir, with that, please.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for letting me be part of this panel. What I'll share with you is first some personal experience and then some things that have happened over the last year, because I've been involved with this since I was a division commander in Europe. And Rhonda Cornum came over to a AUSA Senior Leader Conference and told us about this concept of resiliency. And as she explained it, I had just returned from Iraq with the 1st Armored Division, and I thought, hey, this is a pretty good thing to put in the training guidance that would allow us, and based on the concept and the way it was portrayed, allow us to build super soldiers. As Tom's graph pointed out, the whole line of going up with resiliency and preparing someone for an event before they actually occurred would have been something that might have prevented some of the things that occurred to several of our soldiers in combat had they had some of the skills that were described as part of the concept. Then I was lucky enough to find myself as the DCG of initial military training, and was tasked to implement some of these things at the very ground zero. And I want to go to the next slide if you can, and just talk about some of the things that have happened since I sat a similar panel like this last year, when the concept was just beginning to turn into reality. And those things are related to areas within initial military training, both basic AIT and the BOLIC and warrant officer courses that we've instituted this year. The first one, the Master Resiliency Training Course, I don't want to steal the Sergeant Major's thunder, but we established at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, the Master Resiliency Training Course as a means of bridging from the University of Pennsylvania to an Army course. It stood up, it is functional right now, and since they stood up in April of 2010, we've had close to 500 graduates as Master Resiliency trainers. It's sort of like, if I'm talking to the older soldiers in the audience, it's sort of like the old Master Fitness Training Course. These are the individuals that can go out to a unit and contribute to resiliency training among all the soldiers in the unit. The second thing, and this was a tough one, truthfully, and that was initiating the GAT, the Global Assessment Tool, and some training based on resiliency in basic training. As I've been sort of portraying this year, as I've gone around and talked to a bunch of audiences, we have 10 weeks to turn a civilian into a soldier, and a lot of things to do in that 10 weeks. And frankly, this requirement to do a GAT and teach resiliency was not something that I was real happy about at first. But we were able to incorporate it into the basic training piece within the first 3 weeks, or what we call the red cycle of basic training, where every individual soldier, as they come in, will be able to take that 105 question test under the auspices of a drill sergeant outside the room, not inside with them, and really get a baseline for what their resiliency levels are and how they can improve in the 5 major areas, which I'll talk about in just a second. At the drill sergeant school, where we train drill NCOs to become drill sergeants, we've incorporated about 9.5 hours of resilience training for all drill sergeants. And for about 25% of our drill sergeants, once they get to their unit and are selected by their brigade and battalion commanders, they go back to the course, to the Master Resiliency Training course. So about 25% of our drill sergeants go back and get the whole 2-week full meal deal. And then they come back to their units and help the other drill sergeants in their very close relationship with individual trainees. A little bit different from the AIT platoon sergeants. And if you don't know the difference, we used to have drill sergeants at all of our advanced individual training sites. We do not have that any longer. We've got platoon sergeants that will transition soldiers from the tactical skills taught in basic to their technical skills taught in AIT and then on to the operational unit. 100% of our AIT platoon sergeants will attend eventually the Master Resiliency course, because they have, in some cases, I was just at Fort Huachuca last week, and you would have one AIT platoon sergeant for about 420 soldiers. So those individuals not only have to be resilient themselves, they also have to be able to help these new soldiers transition to the next phase of training. And then the final thing that we did this year was, instead of taking the raw material, which was the recommendation earlier on from the University of Pennsylvania, and incorporate it in our BOLIC, we kind of threw the flag and said, wait a minute, we're teaching a different audience than grad school students at a civilian university. We're training lieutenants to be leaders. So this resiliency training not only has to influence them as individuals, but it also has to allow them to be able to teach their soldiers, as leaders normally do. So we shaped the block of instruction, which was recommended by UPenn, based on a couple of great pilot tests at both the aviation basic course, Basic Leaders course, and the MI Basic Leader course. And starting in October, starting a few weeks ago, we will incorporate resiliency training for lieutenants in their BOLIC courses. Next slide, please. As Tom said, those are the 5 dimensions. And what I'm concerned about this audience taking away from you is these are not separate and distinct and something new. I mean, the 2 things that I really want to talk about is what I just did, what we've done since last year. But the second thing is what, as a senior leader, I perceive resiliency to be all about. It is all about helping an individual soldier grow professionally and personally so they can better handle the kinds of trauma in combat, in garrison, or in a peacetime organization when they take their uniform off that all soldiers see. But you can't just say, hey, those 5 areas you're going to teach classes to, because that's not what this program is all about. It's no kidding putting a focus, I think, and getting to what General Foss said earlier, it's about that professional and personal growth, which makes us stronger so we never have to get to the point where we're told, suck it up. And we already understand that, hey, there are some requirements, you're going to see trauma, you're going to see some exciting times, and you better be prepared for it. So it's all about tracking personal and professional growth so we can better handle the kinds of demands that soldiers handle in either a combat or a garrison environment. And by the way, that's why it's so important to family members too. In an age of never-ending conflict, the family members are put through as much of some of this trauma as the soldiers are. So that's why it's important to train these things. Go ahead with the next slide. I could talk about all kinds of things in terms of what we've done, but instead, I just wanted to talk while some pictures were showing. Because if you think of the 5 areas of resilience as being separate and distinct, they're not. They're interwoven. There are some modules which will help you train and grow stronger on each one. There are some things that assess you in each area, whether you're physically strong, emotionally strong, physically, psychologically strong, with a strong family. And the whole process of resiliency training is to take a look at both your strengths and weaknesses, polish your strengths a little bit more, and take your weaknesses and help them grow a little bit. What you're seeing is a bunch of trainees, both officers and enlisted, in the training base. And whether or not, you know, they're in a class entitled resiliency or doing something like shown right now, doing pugil training, it's all an attempt to help the individual take on some of the stressors that many of the young civilians that we gain into our training base don't have. You know, 90% of our soldiers entering the training base have never picked up a weapon. We've determined that about 83% of our soldiers coming into the training base have never gotten into a fist fight. Some of them have not seen the values that we like to portray as part of the subculture of the military. So many of these things are a surprise to the individual soldiers they come into the training base. So as we get these young soldiers in, resiliency might be a block of instruction, and the GAT might be a test that they take, and the drill sergeants might be gaining better tools to help these soldiers through. But bottom line, it's just really focused at each individual task and the things we ask our soldiers and, in some cases, family members to do, trying to improve them. So that's sort of my pitch from an IMT perspective of a holistic view of what these 5 areas of resilience are all about. And again, you know, to me, it's all summarized in the growing professionally and personally in every realm. I had to go through a lot of experiences in 35 years. I'm thinking of making this Army a career. I think if we had had some of these things when I was growing up to kind of shape my learning and my experiences, I think I would have been a better soldier at the end. Okay, I hope we're getting toward the end of the slides, but instead I'm going to turn it over to Vince Brooks anyway. So go ahead and shut that down.
Okay, General Brooks, ready for your presentation, sir.
Okay, thanks very much, and I hope everyone can hear us okay. First, thanks once again for the opportunity to share our insights on how we apply these ideas of comprehensive soldier fitness and even broader thought of comprehensive fitness, which we certainly think our way through back at our home station in Fort Riley, so that it applies to family members and it applies to our civilians there as well. So we're very serious about this and have been operating actively to bring it into existence in a way that makes a difference for our soldiers, our families, and our civilians everywhere we go. We're going to spend a little time today talking about how do we make this apply in a deployed environment. And I want to shape first some thoughts about the importance of tying this, like so many other things, to the force generation cycle. You should have some materials there available to you. There's a trifold that we've produced that should be available inside of the room. There will also be some graphics that come up. I think you can see the trifold on the screen. At least I can see it on the left screen, on the left side of the room there. And I would tell you that that product will be what guides us here. It's available online. You'll see the web address that's on that, http://www.riley.army.mil/resiliency. And that web page is created. You'll find this product later. It is interactive. And so if at a later time you want to navigate out of any of those hot links, all the items in white and several of the items in yellow are actually the active links and take you out to the sub-descriptions of our program. Again, this is something we take very seriously, and we tie it to the force generation cycle because we think it's important that we are constantly focused on building resiliency in our soldiers. As General Hertling mentioned, and sir, it's great to see you again. As General Hertling mentioned, we receive people and build into them in the initial entry training program this first layer of resiliency. And then, of course, they arrive from a practical application.
Sir, you're breaking in and out. If we
And
could
we
just hold
can't
for 1
stop there
second.
because they're not all that they will be developed.
Sir, I think if we try to reconnect.
Now, train ready.
Sir, we're going to try to reconnect because we're losing you. It's breaking in and out. Can you hear me, sir?
Okay. I'll pause.
Sir, if you could pause, we're going to try to
Yes.
reconnect, and then we're going to catch you at the end. We're going to move on to General Tucker, because it's breaking up bad enough to where we're not getting the full force of your words and your wisdom. So we're going to come back to you at the end, sir, and we're going to move on to Major General Tucker's presentation. Over.
If you go, okay. Well, first of all, I'm a firm believer that what you see depends on where you sit. And what's neat about listening to Major General Brooks talk, he is downrange right now. So he's dealing with an entirely different set of problems. And a population of soldiers who have been prepared for combat and are in a combat zone dealing day to day with those challenges. General Hertling talked about the training base, starting to get these soldiers off on the right foot and sending conditions with the right skill sets to work their way through potential problems that they're going to have in life and I agree, sir, if we'd have had that when we were young, we would have probably not stepped on our poncho as much as we did. Let me put things in perspective for where I am at. Obviously, I'm in Korea. Korea is not like Germany. You can't read the letters. I mean, they're really difficult. Trust me, I know. But so it's an overseas assignment that's very unique. It's Eastern. It's not Western. My population, 90% of my E4 and below population are on their first assignment in the Army. I have 227% strength in E3 and below soldiers. I am short 680 NCOs and have remained around that for a long, long time because of these wars that we're fighting. So in essence, I have a lot of sheep, but I don't have a lot of shepherds. And I have a very vulnerable population because I've got the youngest kids in the Army. And they're in transition. If you look at what is the personality or the conditions in which self-defeating behavior begins to manifest itself, it's a younger soldier on their first assignment. They're in transition. They are now in a unit far, far away from home in a strange, strange country. Up to this point, they've been helped by drill sergeants. They've been helped by platoon sergeants in AIT. They're away from their family now, and they're in this country. And so they're an enormously vulnerable population. And so we were trying to deal with how do we handle this. Next slide. So here's kind of like what I said. Most are single. 12% are married, but they're young married. Being young, newly married, and in Korea living in a high-rise apartment is very, very difficult to start off your marriage together. And you can see some of the other bullets there. Plus, you couple that with an 80% turnover each year. It's a constant changing environment. It's very difficult. You can see that we finally got rid of the curfew, thank God, on the 2nd of July, which wasn't really, in my opinion, doing us a lot of favors in terms of normalcy. And the Vail has its unique challenges as well, which a lot of you probably understand what I'm talking about. But our number one problem was trying to create responsible soldiers. Next slide. This Warrior Resiliency Training Center, let me transition quick to that. We started on 1 July. We've got 18 trainers, one for each battalion. We're going to get 3 per battalion because I think we need depth, because we're going to burn these guys out, and they're terrific. The schools that have been mentioned are absolutely a game changer. I sent a note to General Corelli, and I said, sir, I've been in the Army a long time. It takes a lot to impress me, but this resiliency training works. And so we've gotten behind it at the division level, and we're getting more trainers. We're standing up resiliency training sites at our different installations, because a lot like Germany, we're in satellite locations at Camp Casey, at Camp Red Cloud, Camp Stanley, Camp Humphreys, etc. Next slide. These are some comments from soldiers. I don't know if you can see it, the fine print, but I've put in bold those that really stand out to me. And these are young 18-year-old kids talking. These are the comments you would hear from a seasoned sergeant first class. I've learned to stop, think, and then handle the situation. One of the things that I've discovered with this millennial generation is that I dare say that they don't handle bad news very well. I don't know why. I don't know if their parents said, well, it's okay, Johnny, you got the F, that's because your teacher's really messed up. And it's okay you didn't make the soccer team because the coach doesn't know good talent when he or she sees it. But they've gone through life not really dealing with bad news well. And when they get some bad news, they don't handle it well. And what this resiliency training is doing is giving them skills, not information, but skills. And